So this is what we're going to look at, and don't worry about remembering that. I've got a copy here, so I'll keep referring to that. So let's go into InDesign. All right, just in time. So I've opened InDesign. Here it is. I've not done anything yet. This is InDesign CS6. InDesign comes as part of the Adobe Creative Suite package. It also comes as part of Adobe are now packaging their software as an online suite, as a kind of cloud service. And it's one of the applications in that suite. InDesign is a publishing. It's a sort of high-end publishing layout package. So you could use it for everything from laying out a sheet on an A1. Okay, 5 minutes next time, please. Okay, it's now 7 minutes past 11. Did you? Okay. Rest your legs. You must have been running. Okay. You would also use it for laying out a book, for laying out a magazine. So it is a real high-end layout package, but as I say, you don't need to know that many tools to get started with it. So it's opened up and it's offering me this help screen here, and if you prefer not to see that every time you start up, you can click on here and that will get rid of that. But it's quite helpful. It will give you a list of recent items, and you can see we have our report template as one of those recent items. It also offers you to open a document and just to browse for it, or there are some new document options here. And what we'll do today, we'll just start with a new document. We'll go through that, and then we'll go back into the report template and just show you how you'd work with the template. So let's open a new document, create a new document rather, and we get some options. I'm not opening any sort of template or preset here. We're just starting with a completely new blank document. We have a number of pages. You can change it later. Let's put 20. We start at page 1. Do we want these pages facing each other like in a book? Probably not. You can change all this later. What size? Let's put that to A3. And the orientation there, let's put that to landscape. Columns, I'll just leave that for now, I think. Leave that alone. Margins at the top, the bottom, left and right. We'll just leave that alone, and we will hit OK. And there we get a blank page. Okay, so it's page 1 in our document, and I'll talk you through the user interface a little bit before we begin. Down the left we have a series of tools. And if you hover over that tool, you will get a tooltip, just to help you to know what that is. If there's a shortcut, you see that the shortcut is given when you hover over. So rectangle tool, shortcut is M. Your zoom tool, down the bottom here, shortcut is Z. So you have some tools. And then at the bottom you have some settings to do with color and some layout settings. And they won't do anything yet because we haven't got anything in our document. Over on the right, we have some more tool tabs. And if we click on one of those, it will expand and make a larger window. Now if you had a bigger screen, because again we're on 1024 by 768 up here, so we've got a very small screen. If you had a larger screen, you could detach that palette and put it elsewhere on your screen, or if you had two screens, you could put it over on the other screen. But for today, we'll just keep working with it maximized and then clicking on this little arrow sign to minimize it. Under that we have layers, and we have one layer at the moment called layer 1. We have links. We don't have any links at the moment. So a link is a link to an external document, like an image. Stroke is to do with line color, line thickness, line pattern. Swatches is to do with color swatches, and color is to do with color, obviously. So these are the main palettes that you will use down the left-hand side, down the right-hand side. And across the top, here we've got some more specific tools which are about image size, image position, line size. Again, if you have a bit more screen area, you can expand these, and you could have some, for example, font palettes at the top. If we go under View, sorry, can you not talk? Thank you. If you go under View, you have a series of further settings: zoom in, zoom out, fit page in window, and the shortcuts. And this is a very useful one, Control-0, which, if you're familiar with other Adobe products, it's the same. So it's, you get familiar with that. Control and plus, Control and minus, zoom out, Control and equals, zoom in. So you get familiar with these. So if we just zoom in here to an area, if I hit Control 0, it zooms me back out to the full page. So that's a useful one. Okay, let's start. Let's just pop into layers here. We've only got one layer. Let's create a new layer. And we use this little drop-down menu in the top right-hand corner. And that brings us up some options. So let's have a new layer. Let's call it borders. Okay. We have some settings about locking it, but we'll just leave it. So we have a layer called borders. We have a layer called layer 1. Let's create a new layer, and let's call it titles. So we have a few layers now. I mean, in InDesign, you actually don't have to use layers if you don't want. The benefit of using layers is you can lock them and just stop yourself from accidentally moving things. You can then format that entire layer or hide the entire layer. Okay, so that's we have a few layers now. Now let's go into pages. And you see on your pages, you have, in the lower half here, you have all the different pages in the document, and they're all blank at the moment. So we've got 20 pages down there. And in the top here, we have some masters. And a master is a sort of, it's like a template for a page which you can apply to any page. So anything you draw on that master, you can then apply to every page. So let's start with that. Let's create a new master. So we've clicked on that drop-down button, new master, and it has a prefix of B. Let's call it layout, say. Sorry, it has a restriction on how many letters you can use. Let's call it. Okay, so we keep the same page size as everything else. So we've created a new master. If we double click on that, you can't tell, but it has taken us into that master. So let's imagine we're now defining our master. Let's imagine we want to have a few, let's say some graphics that occurs on every page. So let's say we want to have a line that goes across the bottom. So go over to our line tool here, click on that, and let's just draw a line across. If we hold Shift, it will lock it to the horizontal. And you see that it's appearing in green That's because what InDesign does, when your objects are selected, it colors them according to your layer. So I've drawn that in titles, and I actually wanted it in borders. So what I'm going to do is actually just Control X to cut it. Let's activate layer 1. No, let's activate borders. So we've activated that layer. Then if we go up to Edit, and we want to paste in place, and there is a shortcut, Alt-Shift-Control-V, but you get used to it, but it's quite an exhausting shortcut actually. So we've pasted it in place, and you see that it now appears in red, just to tell us that it's in our borders layer. Okay. And if I excuse me, if I turn the visibility of the borders layer off, it becomes invisible. So quite straightforward really. So I've drawn that line in our just zooming out a bit there. I'll just drag that over to the side. Okay, drawn that line, and that's in our master. Let's just change the appearance of that line. So if we click on the line and we go over to the right to stroke, it's in here that we can change the line's thickness. So 50 point, 2 point, let's put it to 0.05 point. We can change all the settings here about how it will join at a corner, etc. And let's just change it to a dashed line. And then once we've changed it to a dashed line, we get these additional settings at the bottom. So let's just change that. Let's go for, say, I don't know, a dash of 4, then a gap of 2. Zoom in on that, and we've got a sort of dashed line, as you can see. So Control 0, out we come. So there's our dashed line, and let's still in this master sheet, let's add some text. So we go over to our type tool over here, click on that, and you see the cursor changes to a sort of texty tool. Click and drag a box, start typing. Project report. If we when we double click on that text, you see in the top here we activate our font menu. So it's all very familiar. If you're familiar with Word, it's all fairly similar. Let's just highlight that text. Let's change its font to something else. Let's make it bold. Let's just make it a bit bigger so you can see it. Okay. So there's our master sheet layout. If we go back into our pages, if we now let's go to page 1, double click on page 1, there's nothing in it. Okay, we've not added any objects. And let's say what we want to do is we want to use that master layout for most of the pages. So we go back into pages, let's select our first 10 pages. So what I did there was click on the first one, hold down Shift, click on the last one that I wanted, go back into our drop down menu here at the top, and we're looking for Apply Master to Pages. So apply master to pages, and then it's asking you, okay, well, which master do you want to use? And can you just confirm which pages you want to use it on? So we don't want to use a master, we want to use Leo master. And we want to apply that to pages 1 to 10. So we hit OK. And now, you see in our pages that what InDesign does is it puts the word Leo on that page. just tells you that it's using the master called Leo. And if we now double click on page 3, we have those the objects that are in the master page are now appearing on every page. So if we come down to the bottom here, you have some more controls in terms of page. If we go to page 10, we have it. If we go to page 11, it doesn't have it because page 11 is not using this master. So that's really quite easy, but it's very effective because once you now start adding content to this page, if you then decide at a later date, actually, let's just zoom in on that. I'm not really happy about how that's looking. You don't have to go into every page. You would simply go back into that master and double click on that text, for example, change it. Okay, Control 0. Go back in our pages. Let's go to look at page 4. And the change is propagated onto all pages. I'll just save this now in case it crashes. Any questions on masters? Okay, it's quite straightforward. It's really, this is why I think I really encourage students with software. If you don't know it, just have a go, because often the only thing that's putting you off is you sort of look at it and think, oh, I don't know what all these buttons do. It looks very complicated. You get into it, it's very straightforward. But as I say, the advantage of using InDesign rather than, say, Word, once you start putting images and text in, it's just a much better package than Word. It's more designed, it's sort of high-level graphic layout. Okay. Also, because it's an Adobe product, it works very well with other Adobe products. So Photoshop, Illustrator, for example, Acrobat, they all work seamlessly with InDesign. We'll talk about that when we come into images. Okay, so we set up some pages. Let's have a look back in our page layout here. But what we've done is we've not created a title page. So we really want to have a title page before all of this, and it wants to have a different master. So we'll go into pages again, go up to our drop-down menu at the top, insert pages. So you have a question, how many pages do you want? Let's have 2. Where do you want them? Let's say at the start of document. Which master do you want to use? Let's use the A master for those. So we now have here 2 pages at the beginning. They're not using the layout master, they're using the A master. Now the A master has nothing in it, so let's go into that A master by double clicking on it here. And let's add an object. Let's just draw a rectangle. And let's change its appearance. Okay. Let's change its color. So if we click on it, this is our color palette here. It's probably very difficult to see, actually. Yeah, it's really difficult for you to see it. It has some very fine little tools here. When I make the video, I'll zoom in a bit on this so you can see it. But it does have some very fine little tools to see there. What I've done there is I've double clicked on the border. Change our border. Let's just change its line type. Let's make it dotted. Okay. And let's just add a bit of text here. Sheffield University. We'll make that text a little bit bigger. And we'll just change that to something else. Okay. Control 0 to zoom out. And you see that our text didn't fit in the box that we drew. So it's very simple. You hover over one of these grips. So I'm hovering over that grip, drag it until you resize the text box to fit. So very straightforward. Now you see that we're getting these red dotted outlines. That's just a view property. If I go down to this little button down here, that's our view style. If we click on that, click and hold, you get these other options appear. So we are in normal at the moment. If we go into preview, then it will change the view so that what you see on the screen is what we'll print. So it's a much more sort of true version of what the document will look like. And I often prefer to work in that layout, that view, sorry. If we go back into our pages, we've set our A master. So if we go into page 1 now is using our master A. Page 2 is. Page 3 jumps into our other layout. So still all in master. So there's still no, we still don't have any actual objects in the report, in the document. So let's go straight in and start adding some content. Let's go onto our front page, page 1, and let's say we want an image. So you can use this rectangular frame tool over on the left and click and drag a box for your image. Nothing there. And then if you use the shortcut Control D, which is also, if I remember it, I forget where it is. I always use Control D, which is to find a. Let's just use Control D, and I'll try and remember. So Control D is where you then look for the image to place in that rectangle. And the great thing in InDesign is it will accept a Photoshop file, an Illustrator file, a JPEG, a TIFF, a PDF, pretty much anything you could think of using. If you try and select a multi-page PDF document, it's quite happy with that. It will ask you which page out of that document you want. The great thing is if you insert a Photoshop file, it will tell you, if you go back in and change that Photoshop file, it's quite happy with that. It will update it for you. It will give you a little warning to say that Photoshop file's changed, and it will update it for you. So if you go back in time, say 6 or 8 years ago, before InDesign existed, every time you wanted to import, for example, a Photoshop file, you had to export a JPEG or a TIFF from Photoshop, and that would be then a static image. But now we don't need to do that. So what have I got here? I have got some, these are probably JPEGs. Yeah, these are JPEGs and PNGs. So let's just use one of these. Let's insert that. You have this little option here, show import options. We'll use that in a moment when we come to insert a PDF, but for now I'm just going to stick that image in. Okay, so there's my image. Now the rectangular frame that I drew hasn't quite fitted the image, but you have some very useful tools to fix that, but they've disappeared off the edge of my screen, unfortunately. I'll find that on the break and I'll come back to it. Okay, so once we've got that image in place, there are two very important tools over on the left. You've got the selection tool, the top one, which is a black arrow, and underneath that you've got the direct selection tool. And they both perform differently. So the selection tool, when you click on your object, that will allow you to resize the extents of the object in terms of the border. It will allow you to move it. You notice that it's snapping. So by default, it will try and snap to objects. So it's very helpful in that respect. So it's snapping to the top of my adjacent box. You can use your arrows on your keyboard to nudge it. So it's just nudging it across there. So that's the selection tool. Now the direct selection tool is different. What this will do, it won't move the actual object around, but it will move the image within the object. So when if I click and hold it, you see what it's doing? It's showing me in sort of grayed out the extents of the image that I have. And it's allowing me to move that image within the rectangle. So that's what it will look like. But supposing I didn't want to have that part of the image within the frame, we can just pick it up, click it, and move it to a different part of the frame. So it's very powerful in terms of when your images are a different size to the actual frame that you want. Now if we click back on the image and look at our top menu here, you've got some more precise tools in terms of position and size. So first of all, top left is you have the reference point. And this will tell it, if I just change that, it's just basically saying to that image, any actions, where do you want me to center that reference point from? So for example, if I click top left, now let's click top right there, and now I go over here into the size of the image. If I now make that 150%, it scaled it from the top right corner. So very useful. Let's just undo that. Position, this is your accurate position. Now to be honest, normally you don't need to bother with this. You can normally just move it about and let it snap to things. But if you wanted to very accurately position on the page, you can type that figure in to here. Okay. Control Z, just undo that. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this image. So Control C. If we then do our paste in place, which is Alt Shift Control V, it's placed another copy directly on top. You can't see it. Let's just drag it. Let's just drag it down to here. So there's an exact duplicate copy. And I'm just going to using the direct select tool. I'll just shrink that border down a bit. So we've got a duplicate of the same image, and it's positioned at the same place within that frame. Now supposing we've done that, we want to change that image. If you click on the image and you go over on the right hand side into the links tab here, this then shows you all the images that you have in the document. And when you select one, or you have an image selected in the document, you then get a whole series of information about the image down here. And the really useful thing is in here you can then swap that image for something else. So if we go to the top right hand tool and we hit relink, it will then ask us, it will say, well, what do you want to link it, what do you want to change it to? So let's just change it to a different image. And it's changed it. what it also does is it will apply whatever settings you had applied to the first image, it will apply to the second image. So if I just relink that again, relink, and if I just find the related image, which is possibly this one. Yeah, you see what it's done there. If I just zoom in a little bit, so you can see, because it's remembering the scale factor, the positioning of that image. When I brought the new image in, which is almost the same image, but it's actually not quite the same, it is positioning it in relation to the existing image. So if you had, for example, if you had 10 wind path analysis images, you position one, you scale it, you center it, you position it where you want it, copy it. When you then relink it, it will apply the same transformation to the next image. If this was then, now that I've got this linked, so this is a daylight analysis image. If I then, for example, went back into Revit, changed these windows, produced a different lux level image, as long as I save it over the top of the original image, InDesign will bring it in. What it will actually do is it will alert you. It will say this image has changed slightly. You can then just accept it, and it will change the image. So what this means is, if I zoom out here, you can establish the page even before you've completed the analysis. So in here, for example, you might have some early stage daylight studies, and you could put those images into InDesign. As you then update those images, as long as you overwrite the existing image, it will bring those images in. Now, one thing I just noticed there, when we zoom in, you see that the quality that I'm seeing is not very high. That is purely a display performance setting. And if we go into View, Display Performance, we have a series of options. Fast display, if I zoom out, doesn't put the image in. So just for speed, just to speed your computing power up, it doesn't put the image, just puts a box. But to be honest, with modern computers nowadays, you don't need to worry about that. Typical display will show you the image, but the quality is slightly reduced. Just to speed the computer up. If we go to View, Display Performance, High Quality, you get the full quality image. These are not actually terribly high quality images anyway, but in fact, let's just show you that. If I select this image and relink it, I think I have a higher quality image in there. 1500 by 820. So let's just relink it to that one. So you see that I've relinked it to a higher resolution image. It's put the image in exactly the same place, exactly the same zoom factor, but because that was a slightly higher resolution version, when we now zoom in, it's not so pixelated. But the thing to remember, this is purely a display setting on the screen. Even if you work in display performance typical, when we zoom in, it looks very pixelated. It won't print like that. It will still print correctly. Okay. So what we've done, that was our cover. So we're in page 1. If we go to page 2, it has the master template, but doesn't have those images in. Let's say let's have one of those images. So let's copy that, Control C. Let's go to page 2, paste in place. If you just do paste, let's do that. If we just do Control V, it will paste it, but it will just drop it in the middle. So generally, better to use the paste in place command. So that's placed it there. Let's go back over to our links over here. Let's relink that. Let's change it for something else completely. Okay, so it's changed the image for us. And let's just relocate that using our two selection tools over here. Okay, so very, very easy really. Okay, that's the basics of InDesign. Let's just very quickly cover text and page numbers. So let's go on to our first page after the title pages. First page in the report, and we want some text. So we click and drag a text box and we type. Okay, so there's some text. Control A will select all of that text within the box. I'll just make it large so that you can see it. Now you see what's happened there? Because my text is too large for my text box, we get this little plus sign here, which is telling us that there's more text than we can see. It's gone off the bottom. Now what you can do, if we then draw another text box over here, we should, I'm just going to change the display mode actually into normal so that we can see. What we should be able to do now is connect these two text boxes. So if I go down to this plus and we add it to this box, oops, it didn't work, did it? So you see I've hit the plus and you see it's changed my cursor to this big sort of text thing with a load of text. What it's telling me is, right, what do you want to add it to? So if we go over to our next text box and add it, now what it's doing is that text will flow from one text box to the next. So it's a bit difficult to see, but if I type in here now, the text will flow from this box into the next. So that's a very useful tool. You can tell that because you have this small, it's very small, but you have this small indicator that just reminds you that you've linked this text box. And if we click on this text box, you have this very tiny little arrow which just tells you that you've linked it to the next one. If we double click in this text box and go hit Control A, it selects all the linked text. So really useful. What it then means is you can quite happily go about resizing your text boxes, and it will automatically reflow the text into the next box. So that's a very, very powerful tool. Okay. I've not really, as you see, I've not really bothered with layers. I've been putting everything into the wrong layer, but probably should have had a layer called text and be putting this text into that layer. Okay, so there's our report. We're all ready to go. We can view it in preview mode, and that gives us a sort of better view of how it looks. And then in terms of publishing, it's really incredibly simple. Let's just save it first. Go to File. There are different ways of doing it. Go to Export, and you have some export options PDF, interactive print, JPEGs. Normally PDF print is what you want. Hit save. Then you have some options in terms of quality. What quality do you want? What compatibility do you want in terms of previous versions of Acrobat? Which pages do you want? Let's have all of them. What else? This non-printing objects. You can have objects that won't print. Compression. You can change the quality of the output, and there's various other settings in there. Normally, you don't need to change any of them. Hit export, and it should have made a PDF. So if I go to my desktop, that's the PDF it's created. So this is opened in Acrobat now. So there's our document exported as a PDF document. So it's really quite simple. Okay. Any questions before we break? Page numbers. Very easy, really. Just couldn't find it. What you want to do, you want to go into your master. Normally you wouldn't want to put your page numbers on your title, for example. So if you double click on your layout master, which is this, create a text box where you want your page numbers. You can type anything you want. First of all, just make it bigger so you can see it. Obviously, you wouldn't do your page numbers that big. So you can type anything you like in there, and then right-click, insert special character, markers, current page number. And as you see, you have options there. You can put the next page number. You can put a section marker. There's a lot of variables, but normally you just want to put the current page number. And what it does is, you see it's substituted, it's just saying Leo, which is our master name on there. But if we go back into one of our proper pages, it substitutes that for the real page number. Okay, so it's very straightforward, really. It's a little bit hidden away. And as you see, because that page number is not on our title pages, the pages don't appear on our title pages, but then they do appear on our main pages. Now you see it's starting from page 3, and we would like it to start on page 1, and I probably can't quite remember how to do that, to be honest. It's this one. Go into your pages, click on the page, and it's numbering and section options, I believe. Yeah, automatic page numbering. Okay, I'm not going to go into that in a lot of detail, but that's how you can change the style. So you can change the style of how you number your pages, the prefix, where you want it to start numbering, if you wanted to have chapters numbered. I mean, it's all a bit, for our purposes, this is a bit complicated. You're likely just going to number your pages 1 to 20. That's as far as you will go. But all the settings are in there. Okay, so that was page numbers. The other thing I couldn't find was the settings for resizing images, and I found them, but they're a bit hidden away, to be honest. If you go under Objects, Fitting, you have a series of options for those images. But you have these options. fill frame proportionally. So it will take that image and it will fill the frame, but it will do it proportionally. Fit content to frame, it will stretch your image to fit your frame, but that will distort the image, so you wouldn't normally be using that. Fit frame to content is a useful one because it will take the frame you've drawn and it will size the frame to the image. So first of all, if we do fit content proportionally on this image, you see what it's done is it's taken the image, it said, okay, you want me to fit it into that box, but I can't fit it into that box. The box is a different proportion to the image, so you've asked me to fit it proportionally, so it's done that. So you are seeing the whole image proportionally. If we then go back in Object, Fitting, Fit Frame to Content, it's now taken the frame and fitted the frame to the image. So that's useful. What you could then do is drag the image across, snap it to that side. You could then proportionally drag the corner. If we go back into Object, Fitting, Fit Content Proportionally, it will now fit to that width that you've just defined. If we then went Object, Fitting, Fit Frame to Content, we now have the full image fitting the box proportionally. So it's quite straightforward. Once you get into that, you can play about with that. But again, the useful thing is if you change that image, it will remember the settings. So let's just do that once more. Supposing I clicked on the image, click into our direct selection tool, and let's zoom in up here using the proportions. Sorry, wrong. Click on the direct select tool, and I'm going to drag our image to make it larger. Because we're in the direct selection, it's not changing the frame, it's just moving the image about. So we position that where we would like it. We just delete that image for now. Copy this one, Control C, edit, paste in place. Drag a copy of that up to there. If we now relink that, so we go back into links, relink, and we change it for this image. It remembers the zoom, it remembers the position. So it's a very useful tool, that. Okay, that is InDesign. Obviously there are 1,000 more tools in there, but I think what I've shown you this morning is enough for you to put a document together in InDesign. And as you go along, you'll find more tools. I didn't show you things like how to change the color of text, how to change the transparency, but it's all in there. Anything you could imagine doing with text, you can do it. It has a spell checker in there. It has everything you would expect. But those are the basics. So I would encourage you, when you're doing your report and when you're doing your drawings throughout the year, it's a much better package to use than, say, Word, or even doing layouts in Photoshop is not really ideal. Better to do it in InDesign. The other advantage of InDesign is because it's linking to the image, it can process many, many images, very high resolution images, and it won't slow it down because it's just remembering the link. Okay, any questions on? Yeah.
How to set up guidelines?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I was hoping that was going to work. I haven't used InDesign for a little while, so I'm a little bit rusty. What you do is, it's quite easy really. It's like Photoshop. You go into the ruler. So you see we've got a ruler around the edge. And in fact, if we go into one of our masters, let's go into Layout Master here. if you just click and drag from that ruler, it will drag a guide. And if you click on that guide, you can position it accurately up here. So you can do that. Will that show in every page? No. Yes, it does. Because I've applied that in a master, it will show that in every page. It won't print it, but it will show it. Presumably, if I go to preview mode, yeah, it doesn't show it in preview mode. So that's over here. If we go back into normal mode, it will show it, and I'm imagining that objects will snap to it. Yeah, so that it will try and snap to it. Yeah. What I find actually it's useful to have those guides in InDesign, but often because you typically would be copying things from page to page. So supposing this was my, oops, I want to do that. So imagine this was a page. Let's just put an image in here. Control D, remember, to link the image in. And you see it's not, I can't see anything. Object fitting, fit content proportionally. So what you would typically do is to go to the next page is copy all of this. Control C. Go to the next page and use your paste in place. So everything will automatically come back in the same place. But I mean, the guides are useful as well. Okay. Any further questions? Yes. I don't think so. On the same page? Yeah. I don't think so. I think it would normally want you to define them as separate masters. If you wanted that sort of effect, what you could do is go into one of our masters, copy everything, Control C, go back into your other master and paste it in place. And then you would have everything on the same master. Normally the principle is they want you to define, okay, this master is, for example, for the cover, for the contents page. This one is for the normal text. If you're doing a 100-page document, different chapters might have a different master. So normally not. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Right. Certainly well worth learning it. It will make your life easier now, and when you go out into practice, it is a better way of working.